Oh, by the way, I haven't yet experienced the backlash for trash talking JD Vance, but my comments were anticipatory. They weren't, hey, there's going to be a bunch of people, like, there are already a bunch of people here saying hateful shit about me. No, they weren't. They, thankfully, but I've been on the tube for a while, and so I know whenever I say something about somebody that I really strongly disapprove of or have something mean to say about another man, there's almost always a group of fucking fucknuts who support that motherfucker who come in and decide to start shit with me because what? I mean, I don't like what suck the dick of their fur or hardly. But they treat these guys like they're a bunch of psychopaths. Like fans. They behave as yes men towards them, and these guys are able to organize whole hate mobs sent up against other people. Because they have the audacity to to personally disapprove of them and their behavior and things that they do and of them as people and everything they do. I mean, like, I know that I probably said a bunch of really extreme things about JD Vance, but my my low regard for that dude. I think part of it. I mean, if I'm going to be honest about JD Vance, it has to do with a lot of the grifter behavior that I see and the grifter tendencies that I see in him. I mean, this guy is a real social climber, and I don't mean that in a flattering way. Um, far be it. I mean, I've got ambitions myself. Far be it for me to criticize another man for having ambitions, but just the rank hypocrisy of this scummy individual in such a way. I mean, JD Vance is a man that, in 2015 is saying a bunch of negative things about, Donald Trump or, before Donald Trump picked him as his VP is saying, a bunch of disapproving things about him and is, trashing him and, saying all this stuff, but then he doesn't have the integrity to stick with his guns on that one. Once the Republican Party and the tide shifts such that if you stand up to the president, they come for you and everything. What does he do? He starts to suck President Trump's dick again, all over again. Once he reads the political tea leaves, he decides to, despite knowing that there are plenty of valid criticisms to make of the president and everything, and deep down knowing this, he goes and cosplays, as somebody that blindly supports everything the president does. I mean, this is a grifter. This is a man that is financially motivated and pretends to believe things that he doesn't actually believe, either for the sake of money or for power. You know, and we've seen it play out in his. It is unlikely political time in in the sunlight in all of this and everything. Now, of Appalachia and the culture that he came out of, I'm not a big fan of stick in the mud conservatism. I never will be, but it does seem to be a rather interesting place where there's a lot of culture, even if it is, you know, uh, backwards in a lot of ways. Still a lot of music comes out of there in that part of the country, and you know, suffering often breeds creativity. If you get what I'm trying to say, like it pushes people towards it, and so a lot of this shared suffering and everything that the Appalachian people have to go through often pushes a lot of interesting culture bits out of this region of the country. But it is, if I were to say anything about what I know and have learned about history, I can just tell you that if I had been around in that generation, if I'd been around for the coal mining strikes and everything, I would have been with the rednecks, the real ones at the time. But I came up through the '90s, and so I see and witness a lot of the redneck jokes, and what it meant to be a redneck at this point has nothing to do with what they're the it's a term that has lost all of its original meaning. It basically is what I'm trying to say. Like, it used to mean one thing. You were the miners that you were with the strikers, the people that were fighting the mining companies and gotten to embroiled in an actual civil war with these motherfuckers that were running the companies and had to face down the Pinkerton guards and everything else, and all that stuff. I would have been very, very sympathetic to the struggles of the miners at the time and everything. And so, this rich history of labor history is something that I have ultimately become educated in. And so I can tell you, despite the fact that I don't share their politics, the current era, there is still some sort of sympathy for the struggles, at least of the people that came before the current generation and crop of Appalachians. In American history and American labor history is very ugly. I mean, the corporations used to have, if you think that like corporate powers are unconstrained at this point and their corporations are able to get away with a lot of things that they shouldn't be able to get away with at this today, it's true. You're right, but if you rewind the clock and look at this, I mean, there were whole company towns where the whole town existed to serve the corporation, and you had it's an ugly history. I mean, you had people like the mining companies literally able to shoot and kill people during the Ludlow massacre just for going on strike. I mean, it was deadly to be engaged in the labor struggle. I mean, our rights as workers were like literally paved in blood. It's a dark history and everything. So I but I mean that really is the motivation that I have to dislike JD Vance as a person and an individual at this point. I mean, he just I know that his current positions on politics have nothing to do with what his former, are. And I will admit that people can change their mind, but I don't think JD Vance truly changed his mind. He just decided to roleplay as a character, for the political and gain and the social benefits of it and the money that would flow to him for role playing that role in particular. I mean, we've got financially motivated grifters all around us in the modern economy that pretend to be Republicans in order to get, the money for these rich right wing billionaires and everything, and he's one of them. He absolutely is fucking one of them, and it's rather gross and sickening when you see it, because a lot of people and systems and everything are harmed by the fact that he's doing this and is acting this way. I mean, a bunch of people are about to be potentially kicked off their healthcare programs, including my own sibling and everything. All thank you to the fucking Republican Party for that one and everything. And I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, it's not like it's just blind hatred and I hate him because fuck that guy because fuck that guy. I mean, this is another one of these fucking grifters that we're talking about. Very evidently one of these grifters.